Welcome back, listeners, to the Brighter Side of Blue, our worldwide podcast coming to you almost live from Columbo's Cafe and Tavern in Dogtown, home of the S.W.A.T, famous S.W.A.T thin crust pizza and daily lunch specials. I'm looking out on a New Year's crowd, Tommy, and I see like 42 S.W.A.T pizza, maybe 50, JJ?
A little under 50.
A little under 50 pizzas are everywhere I see. I'm Danny.
I'm Tommy.
I'm JJ.
Producer Jen.
I'm very excited about our New Year's show today. We have a St. Louis copper and an ex-Navy SEAL coming on the show today. JJ, you want to tell us a little bit about?
Joe is just a humble guy that you'd never know he was a Navy SEAL until someone told me he was. He came to SWAT as a young man after he got out of the military. I was a sergeant at the time, and he's like the best guy and easiest to have work for you. He does everything right. Great police. He actually left SWAT. Now he's in the
TFO.
TFO.
Task Force Officer. For those listening in Ukraine, that's the Task Force Officer.
And I think Tommy just told me not long ago about his seizure, which I should have known because I'm a city policeman.
They don't like to talk about that. They don't know where that case is going, so we kind of
leave it be. But he makes great cases. How about that? But he's a good dude. And so
great interview, and he talks a lot about how he got through the Navy SEALs and what he did as a Navy SEAL, and a very good interview. He comes from his father Al is a policeman, or was a policeman, and so yeah, it's a great interview.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I saw a short where he had to walk or run 6 miles back and forth through the food hall.
That's not even.
Yep.
That doesn't even start what he went through.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
I mean, I understand it because I went through similar things. You know,
right.
You sure did.
Right? I mean, it's rough.
That pickleball training stuff.
Yeah, pickleball training. It was unbelievable. I mean, sometimes you had to dink sometimes you'd have to dink like 30 times in a row.
That's
I mean,
exactly
nonstop dinking.
Well, Joe had to go through Hell Week, and it was 7 days of pickleball.
He had to tap the bell. He couldn't take it. On the 6th day, he tapped the
one way
bell.
he quit. That'd been the one way
He rang out pickleball. Yeah. And we're getting a lot of feedback about you guys' abuse on me and pickleball, to tell you the truth. I got a lot of family in the crowd. I have my first cousin, Todd, is back there. He's a 4.89 pickleballer, and he's 6'6". Mm-hmm. You got some shit to say? Go say it to him, JJ.
Lauren, take care of him.
Hey, before we get too deep, we're honored as a podcast to be involved, and producer John spearheaded the whole thing. Get that what I said?
Pun.
Spearhead.
There's a pun, yeah. But
good.
John, give us a update on Paige Spears. He's the prisoner down in Farmington that's been locked up for 30-something years. Give us a little heads up on that.
Yeah, we found out last Friday, the 20th, that the Governor Parson had commuted a sentence, which was tremendous news for all of us. We, the governor's going out of office here in a couple weeks. Monday, Paige called. We did find out he didn't get a total commutation. It was a partial, so he still has to go through the parole process. Paige is still very, very grateful that he's getting out, because he wasn't even eligible for parole for his first hearing for another 5 years. But he is going to have to. He's got a date in early January for his pre-hearing, and then the full hearing will be in February. So hopefully he gets out in February.
So how many years did he do? And he should have been out because there was a loophole in the law. He should have been released already, right?
Well, he's got life. He's got life with the possibility of parole, but because of the laws at the time, he has to serve his sentence. 50 years before he's up for parole. It's now 30, but the law changed after he already was incarcerated, so it wasn't retroactive. So he's getting his parole hearing 5 years earlier because of the commutation.
Didn't you say that our text thread, we got all this information from you? We were all our comments we were like pissed.
Yeah.
And you said he took it way better than we did.
Yeah, we were hoping for a full commutation.
There was a lot of.
We called, and he's like nervous. He's like, "Hey, John, I got something to tell you, but it's probably not the news you want to hear, but it's not bad." And he's like consoling me, and he goes, "But I've been in here for 36 years. I can do another 60 days,
Right.
But he called his mom, who's still alive. She's 88. He's like, "Mom, I won't be home for Christmas," and she says, "Hey, it's just one day. God's got a plan for you." we'll have Christmas when you get home. So that he's taking it well. I talked to him again today. Everything still, I guess, is in line, but we still have that. Half the people got commuted right away. They walked out Friday.
Well, some of those were murderers, right?
Yeah.
That's odd.
That is crazy.
Yeah, Page was guilty of a robbery where nobody was hurt, and he wasn't even the gunman.
Correct. So Page and a couple other people have have to go through the parole. And the other bad news is the other people don't have to be on parole. They're done, but they're sentenced completely. Page will still be on parole when he gets out, which, I think he's been in prison for 36 years. He's 64 years old. I don't think he's going to go out and do any robberies.
So keep him away from us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
I appreciate
the
it.
show, though. We're going to have him on the show.
Yeah, we should have him on the show. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's looking forward to being on the show.
Have him and John as our guest, the odd couple.
Either way, I appreciate what the governor did. The governor was a law enforcement man himself,
Yes, he was.
and I don't think he took it too lightly that 4 law enforcement guys and active commander were asking for this guy's release. So,
And I think
We're-
it's just
take what we
paperwork
can
at
get.
that point. You know what I mean? It's paperwork that's been around forever, and he gets stuck behind all that. And
yeah.
changing all
Yeah.
that.
So anyway, we'll have an update for that soon, hopefully.
Yes. But the hard part's done. He got the commutation.
Yeah, that's
That's a great job, John. You
Thank
did a
you.
wonderful
Yep.
job.
Yep, John. John spearheaded that whole thing. He sold us on it. We weren't
all we
weren't
did.
too keen with the idea at first of getting some guy that was good for a robbery out of jail. But once you listen to all the facts, he needs to be out and make room for a shithead carjacker.
All
that's
we
out
did
there.
is get our pom poms out.
Yeah, little
cheering
cheerleaders.
John on.
Yeah, we're cheering John on. Yeah, cheerleaders. This is our when this episode comes out, it'll be a 2025.
Mhm.
There's some weird New Year's traditions out there in the world.
Oh, I'm sure there are, and I'm sure you're going to tell us all about it.
Well, I have some, and I like I always say, I want our listeners to just be smarter. And after they hear me, I feel like they're just going to be smarter. They're just going to be 1 notch up from where before they met me, right,
Okay.
John?
Correct.
In Colombia, in the country of Colombia, I got 3 of them. JJ, can you stick through 3 of them?
Yeah, but I wanted to say that I'm going to ask your family. There's a lot of family members here. You listen to all his stuff he says all the time. Have you feel like you gotten smarter? Okay, go ahead. Your turn.
They need to listen more, listen better. They need to focus.
Okay.
In the country of Colombia, when the clock strikes midnight into the new year, it is tradition to run around your block 2 or 3 times with an empty suitcase as fast as you can. Just start running around the block with an empty suitcase. They
I'm
say,
just picturing somebody running.
"Oh, I can't even say with a straight face. You see all these people just running around with an empty ass suitcase."
So what's it for?
It's supposed to guarantee a year full of travel.
Well, if you don't want to travel.
Don't run around the block or fill the suitcase up or something.
I just lay on the couch, and I want a year full of laying on the couch. I'd rather do that.
But
It's a good time to commit a burglary because everybody's running around. all the houses are empty.
Just put shit in your suitcase and run.
Yeah.
Keep running.
But could you imagine having a drone at 12:01 and
Does this
see
still
all
go
these
on?
sorry asses just go around? Huh? Say it again.
Does it still go on? Are you
For
aware?
those that want a year full of
That
travel
one neighborhood?
in that one neighborhood, there's one neighborhood that still honors it. Black-eyed peas in the South are eaten. My niece is nodding her head. They're world travelers over there. My family's world travelers. JJ, they probably know this. But in the South, black-eyed peas is supposed to bring you prosperity, economic prosperity. But on New Year's, do not eat chicken or lobster, JJ.
Why is that?
Well, they're both bad luck. And the superstition goes that a lobster is bad luck for its ability to walk backwards. New Year's, you never want to go back in time. And a chicken is bad luck for its ability to scratch itself while walking backwards. That's something you can't even do.
That's bad luck.
It's bad luck. Don't scratch
Scratching
yourself.
yourself
Not on
walking
New Year's, because
backwards?
you're supposed to go forward into 2025, so nothing backwards. You're supposed to eat round things.
Right.
Round things.
I feel dumber already.
I'm skipping New Year's.
Well, those are little nuggets for you. You like those? What's our boy Woody up to?
Oh, did you guys see this video?
I heard about the video.
All right.
It's
This
awesome.
video So Woody,
You
he's
can't
the
see. You might
YSL.
want to come this way and see this video.
It'll be on. Is it going to go on the screen?
This Woody, he's a gang member, right? He was in the YSL Thug trial.
Are we gonna play it?
Yeah, we're gonna play it, and I just want to set this up. So Woody's now become a media star, social media star. So he goes around and does all these bits and whatnot. Well, this particular bit, he goes to a dog training place, and that's obviously a local one. And these dogs are trained. They put him in a bite suit, and I guess they're just gonna video it and see what happens. Well, it goes completely wrong. I mean, it couldn't have gone any wronger for Woody.
And this guy's famous now because of being on a
You
trial.
gotta remember, this is a gangster. This guy's killed,
Yeah, good.
supposedly killed people, and all kinds of stuff. So as John gets this video ready,
But he is funny.
dude, I'm telling you, and you can tell the trainer, he's not
A trainer.
good trainer. This
No,
guy
he's-
has not
He's not
done
certified.
this very well.
He may be certified, but
Here
not
it
as a
comes.
trainer.
Here
You
we
got
go.
it? Yeah,
Watch
let's
this.
go with it. You got sound? Okay, here's Woody.
I can feel it. Stop! Oh! Get it out! Get it out! Oh! Yo!
Look at this
Oh!
face. Look at this
Oh!
That's the dog trainer.
He's a dog trainer. He's petting the dog. Get off of him.
He's petting him.
Petting him. I can't get him
Hell
off.
no! Get this motherfucker down! Get out! Ow! There you go.
He's
There you go.
He's telling Woody to freeze. He's like, yeah, stay still.
Get him out of me! Stand up straight.
Stand up straight.
He's telling Woody to stand up straight.
I'm a man now.
Get out. Let him pet him.
He's just petting him.
That's
Look
encouragement.
at him. He freezes.
I'm sweating. I'm getting pants. I'm like, oh, get him out. I can feel it.
Now watch when he gets off.
That's it.
He'll get off him here in a minute.
You still fighting? Stop that fighting.
Watch, he'll get off.
Watch him. He's all still.
Right now.
Watch, he gets down. Watch him come back down. Watch him get up against the garage.
Yeah.
Hold on. Listen to Woody at the end here.
That is the end.
That is the end. So Woody's worth millions of dollars from being a defendant for murder, right?
Shit, that had me. I mean, I watched that at least 20 times, and each time it got funnier.
Oh my!
Was that an actual training center or is it
Hell
just his
no.
neighbor?
That is not. That's
I
the
think
back
it's a
alley
training
somewhere.
center run by the prosecution team.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, we got Woody coming in. Let's get that one dog.
Is that the Fannie Willis?
Yeah, the Fannie Willis dog training center.
Oh my God! Well, that kind of stressed me out watching that.
Oh, dude.
Do you have anything over there, JJ?
I do.
JJ Zen, John. Do we have any JJ Zen music?
This is actually kind of helps us. I think this is part of Paige Spears. It's for him, basically, or us. The task ahead of us is never as great as the power behind us. I'm not seeing it again, but
Say it
like
again.
I could, but
I mean, if you wanted to,
no, it's all right.
I'd like to hear it again.
I'd like to hear it again.
The task ahead of us is never as great as the power behind us.
All right.
Ralph Emerson.
All right.
Only reason I agreed to do that because I knew I could nail it the second time too.
Where's Waldo?
Yeah, Ralph Emerson. Yeah,
That was very good, JJ. Very, very
job,
well done.
JJ.
That was a good one.
that's
It's
good.
kind of
Yeah.
appropriate for Paige Spears, right?
Yeah.
And
Big
for,
push.
and
We
for
went-
Woody.
Woody.
The task before us now is to talk about Schicker Ford of St. Louis, commercial vehicles, the mobile service van, Schicker Automotive, and they also have Schicker Ford of St. Louis, I should say. They have two other locations, JJ. Where are
Washington, Missouri, and Union, Missouri.
they? Yeah, they sell Chrysler, Jeep, and Ford.
Very
And
good.
they're a great family sponsor of the show. They're a great community partner with St. Louis.
Are they renewing? for
Mama
Union?
Howard's, we should have that clip. Mama Howard's, Schicker. Do you have that, producer John?
I thought it was that one, but I don't. It's not.
No, that
I
was.
don't think it's readily available.
Do you have it readily available?
I'm going to guess one more. It could be it. It could not be. No, I think it's this one. No, I don't have it.
I can sum it up though. Get
Go
your
ahead.
cars from Shicker Ford, but get your Zens from JJ.
Yeah, Mama Howard. What is it with my family and you?
I love Mama Howard.
Yeah, they all support JJ.
Whatever.
They don't appreciate me. And my wife is here in the crowd, JJ.
Thanks for your support, Denise. Appreciate you.
Yep, she's
you know,
making sure that Danny doesn't slide any petty insults his way.
Very good. Shicker Ford, hey, but if we want to sit around and smoke a few cigars, Tommy?
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else with that. See my
Oh,
hat?
yeah, your hat.
No, go to Riverman Cigar Company over there on Watson Road, 8984 Watson Road. See Dan Ponder. Go in there and tell him you're a follower of the Brighter Side of Blue. Give you a little discount. He also gives discounts to first responders. And they have cigars ranging from anywhere from the low price cigars all the way up to the premium cigars, you know, whatever your taste is. And Dan's just a great guy to go in and talk to, have a cigar with him, and talk about the Brighter Side of Blue.
Very good sponsor of the
Ponder.
show.
Yes.
Very good. We have to pay the bills now, people. This is how we get paid. This is how we make the big bucks. And if you like this show and you're hearing it on across all social medias, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Keep the blue wave going. We're up to 26 million viewers, right, Producer John?
I'll tell you what,
Oh,
you
at
talk
least.
about that blue wave
At
all the
least.
time, Danny.
Yeah.
But there is a positive, and I've talked to some commanders within some of the police departments and the federal people, and there's a great buzz going around about law enforcement right now. You know, the people are getting more excited about it. I mean, the support can really be felt, and you know, it's an exciting job, and we have said that we're going to use this as a recruiting tool. Don't shy away from it if you're looking for something to do, and trying to make a difference. And again, there's a good buzz around law enforcement. It's well deserved, and again, we're not perfect. But 99.9% of people are out there trying to do the right thing all the time.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on that a little bit. So one of our last guests was Chris Hayes, Fox 2 reporter, investigative reporter on his last show. And he was saying about, you know, policing their own and how we always say we don't like bad policemen either. We want them gone as bad as anybody else does.
Absolutely.
And he was saying when there is a bad apple copper out there, all his sources, not all of his sources, but most of his sources on reporting come from coppers that want that guy gone too. So,
Right.
you know, there's bad apples in every profession, and we don't
Just
appreciate
like we said,
them.
we're going to ridicule the ones that step out of line and they do stupid stuff. Like I don't know if you saw that video that went viral with a young female talking about her horrible experience with dating a St. Louis City police officer. It went viral, and you know, we don't know enough about the fact or enough about the case to comment on it. But if what she said is true, this guy needs to be ridiculed. Not only ridiculed, but we're going to look into it more, see what the case is.
He's no
about.
longer a city police officer.
I get that, but they say he's
Just saying.
harassing her.
We got rid
stuff
of
like
it.
that. But if he's going to harass her, we're going to
Yeah,
see what we can do too.
yeah,
Because that embarrasses us.
yeah. It's bad.
It embarrasses
It's bad.
us, and we don't like that.
No, it's a growing. We're turning the tide back into favor of the blue wave, and that's why we want you to like, subscribe, and share.
Hey, can I say something about my little tiff I had with the munis and how
Yeah,
Little thing-
Candyland.
Yeah, you called the Muni's Candyland.
Well, I'm trying to get away from that,
All right.
but I do want to say that people are now sending me, I'm getting emails or on the Brighter Side of Blue is asking if they can qualify.
They're sending their resumes to you.
If there can be, they can call themselves a police officer, a city police officer. There is one guy. He had 11 years on, but he got on older and he was forced to retire at 65. His name is Joe Pierce. He listens to the show.
He used to work for me down in
Joe
downtown.
Pierce, great
yeah.
guy.
Good guy.
He didn't want to. He would have kept going until he was 75,
Yeah.
but he had to leave. And he's a neat guy. And Joe, yes, you can claim city police status forever and twice on Sunday.
So JJ, you're giving commutations to
I am.
Yep.
I'm in the mood of.
Did you just give him a
commutation.
partial, or did you
No,
give him
No
a
full.
He gets full.
Okay.
He
gets-
came on the city at 54 years old.
Went through the
Yeah.
academy, which is not that easy. All the running and everything. So he's a good man. He retired off the bikes. He rode bikes to the end, and he's just a good guy. And I'm glad.
I
he,
thought it was funny that he sent in
Yeah.
that message saying, "Can I be?
Do you mind if I call myself an
And
ex
he
city
said,
cop?
in the message, he also said, "I think Laurie Urson likes me too."
Yeah. I think
Because she was the judge of all that.
That's
Yeah.
good, JJ. Nice thing.
Okay.
Producer John, are you sitting on one of your famous newsroom.coms before we
on now.
wrap this up?
Yeah, exactly. Last week, I talked about Dirty Harry, and the killer in there was the Scorpio killer, but it was based on the Zodiac killer. out in California back in the 60s. So I did a little research on the Zodiac, and he was active in 68, 69, the actual crimes that the police pin on him. There was 4 attacks, 5 people died, 2 people survived in this, but he, the first 3 attacks were like young victims, like late high school, early college victims. They were couples. He would catch them in secluded areas, like Lover's Lane kind of areas. And then the 4th incident was a cab driver in San Francisco. But what's kind of interesting about him is he started sending letters to the newspapers and to law enforcement, and they contain cryptograms. So there's all these symbols in that, and he left it up to the newspapers and the police to decipher what he had written. And the police initially couldn't figure out what the cryptograms, but there was a husband and wife, they were school teachers, and they were kind of into that, into deciphering cryptograms, and they initially could get the first, translation of one of them. But then he started sending more letters, and he sent, they didn't all have cryptograms, but on the 4th letter he sent, he said, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." And that's where he nicknamed himself the Zodiac Killer. And he had a signia, which was a circle, like with crosshairs in it. So it looked like almost like a scope. So anyway, everybody was working on San Francisco police, Vallejo, California police, a bunch of different agencies, and actually agencies are still working on it today because they're technically unsolved. But he left for a while. He claims he killed 37 people. He's killing people, so he had slaves waiting for him when he got to the afterlife. They were, it was some kind of religious belief he had. But it was kind of. I was going through this after the football games yesterday. I was on Netflix, and they had a Zodiac Killer little mini series on. It was a documentary, and there was one official suspect in this, and it was a school teacher named Arthur Lee Allen. And what was kind of interesting about this documentary is there was a family that had 7 kids. The dad was in prison. This school teacher befriended the mom and helped her raise these kids, and he would take them on field trips and that. And he was, now that these kids are older, like in their 70s now, but looking back at these killings, he took them to these locations where these killings happened.
On the field trips or whatever?
Yeah. So I think that was his way of, if it was him, of having an excuse to be in these areas, or, outside of his area where he lived. And, he ended up dying like in 92 or whatever. But the police did 3 search warrants on his property while he was still alive. They questioned him many times. The kids questioned him afterwards, and they're pretty sure that he was the guy. But the interesting thing was there was a pair of detectives from the San Francisco Police Department, and one of them was actually a guy that they loosely based Dirty Harry on, the movie character, but he and his partner went to interview Arthur Lee Allen, and when they got done, the detective asked his partner, he goes, "Do you think that's the guy?" And he goes, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "Why are you so sure?" He goes, his wristwatch was a Zodiac watch, and it had that exact insignia on it.
Wow.
And it turns out his mother gave him that watch 2 days before the first killing.
Oh my God!
In the Zodiacs. So, anyway, he died. He never got formally charged. He went to jail for some child molestations, which apparently he molested some of these kids that of this family that was in the documentary.
Was there a movie named Seven? Was that have anything to do with this?
Brad Pitt.
Yeah, with Brad Pitt.
There was a Zodiac movie that was written by a guy who worked for the San Francisco Chronicle, but he wasn't even a reporter. He was an illustrator, but he just became infatuated with the case, and he wrote the screenplay for that movie, which apparently was a pretty good movie. I haven't seen it. It just came out years ago. But anyway, that's the actual Zodiac killer story.
Wow. That's a pretty good, cheerful holiday story, John. What else you got?
Merry
I was trying to
Christmas.
throw in a couple jokes.
You want to
there.
talk about the
I was like,
Holocaust or
"That's a
anything,
real
or what do you want to do?
Well, I think all the victims ate chicken on New Year's Eve.
That was good. That was good. So, as we wrap up, I'm so happy. I'm excited about this. JD, do you know that Tommy wrote a poem
Yes.
to end the show?
But before we end the show, can we talk? Do we need to talk about Corby Campbell? And
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then
We got to
the-
pay the
and the wor-
bills.
and the
Yeah,
worms.
those lights aren't free.
yeah,
CampbellSecurityGroup.com for all your security needs, corporate, personal, home safety. Corby and his team can come up with plans. If you're a young or business that is growing and you need safety plans, Corby's your man. And again, this is
what if?
What if I used all my testosterone
Right.
last weekend?
Oh, that's right.
that's right. We forgot. We almost forgot that one. That
No,
was
he didn't.
Good,
I'm
good
waiting on it.
segue,
That was
producer
waiting
John.
I'm waiting on it.
I think Danny Screw does all this. You're supposed to write all this down, and then the next
That's
thing you know,
okay.
you're jumping into
We
the.
we got
I-
his back. We always got
That's all
Danny's
right.
back.
You know how you rediscover your prime?
How?
Now you go to primeperformancestl.com. That's their website. But Prime Performance has got 2 locations. Where are their locations at, JJ?
1222 Central Park Drive in O'Fallon, Illinois, and 44 Fenton Plaza, Missouri.
And at Prime Performance, they offer testosterone therapy, hormone therapy, vitamin injections, medical weight loss, IV therapy, and peptides.
Very good.
So that's a good way to start to rediscover your prime. They are owned by former law enforcement, and they do give discounts to all first responders, and they do give a slider discount for all listeners of the Brighter Side of Blue.
Nice.
Yeah, I called there and I talked to Greg Worm, and I said, I need some, do you have some advice about, I need to improve my love life. And he said,
I knew this was going to be bullshit, but keep going. I just knew it.
How
So
could
he
you
sent
improve
me-
your
he-
love life?
He sent me a package of some supplements, but he also said the main thing you need to do is run 10 miles a day for 2 weeks. So I did what he said. I took the supplements. I ran 10 miles a day for 2 weeks. So I called back. And I said, Greg, I did what you said. I ran 10 miles a day for 2 weeks. He goes, well, how's your love life? He goes, I said, well, how do I know? I'm 140 miles away from home.
What do you do?
Producer John, ladies and gentlemen. Producer John.
I'm here all week.
Now, Tommy, you wrote this?
Tommy wrote a poem.
Nice.
He called me or texted me on Christmas Eve morning when he was only like two sentences into it. And
I thought it'd take me longer, but I didn't want to go too long.
all right, well, let's
I just
go,
wanna
Tommy.
make
Let's
it
end the
quick.
show with
And then last year's, this is our last show of the year.
okay.
So 2024 was the first full year of our show. We thank all of our listeners, and on we will go. We thank all of our guests for the stories we hear. They brought us much insight and an occasional tear. We thank our sponsors. Without them, it can't be done. Please support their businesses, each and every one. With Danny in the middle and JJ at his right, the petty insults will continue each and every night. Tommy might be high, but that's okay. Producer John's one-liners are funnier that way. JJ Zen brings us wisdom and joy, but when he's asked to repeat, we all say, oh boy. We may end up in heaven or maybe in hell. Either way, we know we can count on Mary Michelle. Law enforcement thanks you for the support that you give. Communities that do so are safer places to live. Our listeners make this fun, a lot of fun for us to do. To all of you, a happy new year from the boys at the Brighter Side of Blue. And lastly, some of our content might leave you in stitches. With all that said, peace out, bitches.
Very nice, Tom.
The only thing you could have done better, Tom, is you would have memorized it.
Yeah, very nice.
That was good.
All right.
That was very
All right,
good.
so we're just going to set up our, that was
we
our
might
open.
as well tell it while we're here and doing that. Next week, we are going to set up, we got our daughters on, and we are really looking forward to that. A lot of our families are in here. a lot of our friends. So that's going to be really cool.
So we're going to transition now.
Joe Busso, and Joe was on one of our other podcasts with Federal Friday with Jack and Joe Riley, or Jack Riley and Joe Cronin, and he talked a little bit about his time in the Navy SEALs, and that's what we're going to get a little bit into more today. And we also have with us Steve Dodge, and he was on last week's show, and you guys will hear it, but he stayed over, and he used to supervise Joe Busso in the SWAT team. So we thought it'd be good to have him along for the interview. And then, of course, you got JJ down there.
I was also a supervisor too.
Yep. And we'll talk a little bit about all that later and get into all those great times.
I work with Joe's dad,
Yeah.
the 9th District, back when I first came on.
Now, Joe,
Great man.
Joe, when did you guys cross paths? Your dad and you on the same time?
No, he retired in like 96 or 97.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've been on for about 16 years now. You're in special assignments. And but I think what we wanted to get into is after we did that show with on Federal Friday with Jack and Joe, we were talking afterwards, you, myself, and John, and I found it very interesting, the path that you took to the police department. And some of the other stuff that we really didn't get into about the Navy SEALs and training, and I found it interesting, and I wanted to have you back, and thanks for coming back.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So I think the first thing we'll get started with is, how did you become a Navy SEAL? How does that process go? And then why did you want to become a Navy SEAL?
I mean, I knew from a very early age that I was going to join the military. At first, I wanted to join the Marine Corps, and I didn't know anything about the SEALs. About halfway through high school, I read a book, some Vietnam guys that were writing books about their SEAL experience, and I was hooked. I knew that that's what I wanted to do.
Joe, do you know the name of that book?
It was called Rogue Warrior.
Okay, I've read it.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a good one.
Yes.
So the process is you have to join the Navy just like anybody else. But when I was going through the process, there were special programs you can sign up for, and I think they called it like the Dive Fair program, and it was for anybody that was joining the Navy that wanted to become a diver, like an EOD guy, so explosive ordnance disposal person, and SEAL, and then the special boat units. So to get those programs, you had to kind of, when you were joining the Navy, you had to try to get those programs into your contract, and you had to pass a PT test before they let you sign up. But if you were to pass the physical fitness test for it, you got it in your contract, so that once you made it through boot camp, and then there's some extra training you have to go through after boot camp, you were guaranteed to have a shot to go to the SEAL training, which is called BUDS. It's basic underwater demolition / SEAL training.
How long is the pre-training to even qualify for BUDS if you get there?
So I think when I was going through boot camp was about 15 weeks.
Okay.
So you had to go through regular Navy boot camp with everybody else. And then when I was in the military, when I was in the Navy, SEAL or diver or special boat unit, it wasn't what the Army or the Marine Corps call a MOS. In the Navy, they call it a rating. Those weren't ratings. They were basically special programs or special jobs that you had. So you had to go and get a rating somewhere. So you could be like an electronics technician or a machinist mate or any of the Navy like ratings. So my rate that I chose before I went to SEAL training was Intel Specialist. It was basically, yeah.
Joe, let me ask you this. Now, you have to be a strong swimmer to be in the SEALs. So did you have a strong swimming background, or you just weren't afraid of?
Never swam like on a swim team or anything like that,
Right.
but I grew up in the water.
Okay,
And I grew up swimming in rivers.
So you weren't afraid
I
of
was
water.
in the
that's
water
for
a
sure.
lot when I was a kid, and I loved the water. I also I did scuba diving when I was 16
Oh,
years
really?
old.
Okay.
So the swimming stuff was never a problem for me. I just
Really?
was able to do it.
That's awesome.
Is it true they drowned you at one point in time, or whatever?
No, but you pass out a few times. Yeah, that's for sure.
Now,
So no one ever had to give you CPR or anything like that, right?
No, but I've passed out, and they had to kind of maybe put like an ammonia
Oh my
inhaler
gosh.
underneath your nose and kind of get you to wake up.
And Joe, how old were you when you were going through this?
I mean, I left for Navy boot camp a week after I graduated from high school. So I was 18 years old. I had it in my contract that I had a shot at buds as long as I passed the PT test in boot camp, and then I had to pass it in the extra training afterwards, like that Intel Specialist School. But yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now you say the basic training. So are the people that join the Navy to go on like ships doing that training also?
You're in a Navy boot camp, I guess, platoon or something with people who are going to go and do all kinds of different jobs in the military, in the Navy.
Since your assignment would be more physical, is there an additional physical test that you have to pass that's different than theirs?
Yep. So when you're in boot camp, you have to take that SEAL entrance PT test, which actually it wasn't too hard. But it was like SWAT though. You'd be surprised how many people fail it when they're under pressure. It was push-ups, pull-ups, a 500-meter swim, and a 1.5-mile run wearing boots and pants. And it wasn't hard, but it's kind of like our SWAT test where you could be really good at 4 of those things, and then the 5th thing you kind of suck at.
So in your, let's say, now let's get to Buds. So you go to Buds. How many people from your boot camp went to Buds?
I didn't recognize anybody from my boot camp there because there were just people from all kinds of different, some people that had kind of been in the fleet for a little while. But I showed up. My class started with about 200 people.
Okay. Is that typical?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty typical. So before Buds start, at the time it was about 2 or 3 weeks of what they called indoc. So we lost I think like 60 or 80 people before we even started day 1 of training.
And what's indoc?
It's kind of, they call it pre-Buds. It's a couple of weeks before you start day 1 of training, and it's just all PT and getting you ready for what you're going to experience when you actually go to Buds.
Are they
PT,
testing your limits?
Oh yeah.
Joe, once the class starts, how big is the class?
We had I think we probably started with around 150, 120 to 150 people.
And how many of that make it?
I want to say from that class, because I got rolled out of that class, but it was usually about 19, anywhere from like 13
And
to
you mean you got rolled out, you got hurt, and then you had to restart?
Yeah,
You
I
left off.
got injured halfway through, and I had to be on limited duty for a couple classes and class up with it.
And then did you start where you ended, or you have to start from the beginning?
So I got hurt in Hell Week, and I was able to
that
make
close.
about a week after Hell Week.
Wow.
So I had a torn hip flexor. And
So you're that's how close is that to the end? I mean, that's it.
The good thing is I made it through the really hard thing, which is Hell Week. And I was able to, I pushed through Hell Week. I tried to go another week. I couldn't do it. So they were able to let me go on limited duty, heal up. And then I started with another class like right after they got done with Hell Week.
Oh,
I
that's
classed
good.
up with
Nice.
them.
Nice.
Yeah.
So can you talk about Hell Week a little bit? Can you explain that a little
Let's
bit?
go further. Let's go
Sure.
further back and start. What's a typical day when you start the class?
No,
you
I
got
just
your
want to hear about
150
Hell Week.
people.
Yeah.
Right. What's your typical day look like?
Usually, I think it was 4th. You had to be ready to go for PT at about 4 a.m. I think we had 4:30 PT grinder. So 4:30, 2 hours of what they call grinder PT, but it's like, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, calisthenics on the grinder. The grinder is like it's kind of like the big courtyard area in the compound, and that's where we did a lot of PTs.
Are they spraying you with the hose and all that?
Yeah,
or-
spraying with you with a hose, yelling at you, all that stuff.
Joe, was there any pickleball?
There was no
Hey, and Joe, other than the water spraying in your face, it kind of sounded like my preseason at Quincy.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you could do that. You do that for a couple hours, and then you go run to breakfast. One thing about Buds is that you can't be caught walking. Everywhere you go, you have to run. So our chow hall was about a mile away on the other side of the base, like the regular side of the base. So just running to and from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that was a 2-mile run. So you ran 6 miles a day just going to eat. And
God.
yeah. Morning PT, and then you go to breakfast, come back, and there was always something, maybe like a log PT after that, which is, I think that was one of the hardest things we did was log PT.
Old Miz.
Old Misery has like a really heavy log that they make you pick up when
Did
you're
you
in
ever,
trouble.
did you ever have to do that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, we had to do that. Yeah.
Because that was the punishment, right?
That was the
When
punishment.
you finished last in something, you had to hold
Now
it.
they have one, and I don't know what the name of it is, but it's even bigger than Old Miz. But Old Miz is still out there, and they're just these big
Wow.
telephone poles, and they carved in it Old Miz, and it's Misery Loves Company. And then if you fail in evolution or you're in last place, you have to do log PT with Old Miz. It's terrible.
Which
It's-
weighs a lot more than the other ones.
Yes, and the other
Right.
ones weigh a lot.
Right.
So, and you're doing all that on the beach. You're kind of running back and forth into the surf, like getting wet and sandy. So you have to run out into the surf, get completely wet, get covered with sand head to toe, and yeah.
Now, I got to ask you a question. There's a question. There's a competition between the West Coast and East Coast. I mean, there's
Little bit.
kind of a rivalry between the two.
Yeah, there was a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know. I just kind of felt when I was in my team, we were a little too busy to really.
Okay,
care
but can
about
you
any of
explain the difference? There's a West Coast California team, and there's an East Coast team that trains.
Yeah, there's your East Coast SEAL teams, and there's your West Coast SEAL teams. And
Okay.
I kind of felt like every once in a while I hear people call the West Coast ones like the Hollywood teams.
They had Oakley glasses and shit.
Yeah.
But may I ask
Yeah.
you, a
Squad
friend of
4.
mine, and you've known him, is
Right.
Jared Ogden.
Oh, yeah.
I was buddies when you guys,
Yeah.
and I remember when you guys got together for the first time and
Right.
talked, and you had your own little conversation, own
Sure.
dialect, and you guys knew that you were talking about different classes, and
Yep.
it was kind of interesting
Yeah.
to see. And he was a West Coast guy too.
Was
right?
he a West Coast guy? I
think
can't
so.
remember.
And
But
you were West Coast, right?
I was East Coast.
Oh,
yeah.
I think you were. Then he must. I think you were the same because
Okay.
you guys knew a lot of the same
That's right.
things in common.
Yeah, it's been
So
a
I guess
while, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yep.
So now you get through that, and then buds. Tell us.
Yeah, you might come back from breakfast and do log PT. You might do what they call surf passage, which is those little inflatable like raft boats, paddling those out past the surf zone. There's on that little part of San Diego there's some pretty big surf, especially in the wintertime. And it's a challenge to get those things through the surf. So you're just practicing trying to punch through that surf with those boats, and you're getting dumped, and people are getting thrown from the boat, and you're losing your paddle, and
And
you
that was
gotta-
always a competition too, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yep. So and so how they split up the buds class is it's not platoons or squads, it's called boat crews. So you'll have a boat crew, and I think it's about like 6 or 8 guys per boat crew, and you have one officer in charge of each boat crew, and they rank it in order of how tall you are. So I think I was in the tallest boat crew, and this is the truth. It's not always the case, but a lot of times the tallest boat crew is always the worst boat crew.
I can see it.
So we get
within
punished.
water. Yeah.
I just think it kind of
I can
pays
see
to
that.
being too tall and pays to kind of be.
So
in
you
that
were
5
under, you were
foot
under
8
the
to
gun
5
right
foot-
off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
You had all the other big
Right.
guys on your team.
Right. We were always the slowest paddlers in the boat, and we were always,
You had the most weight
So you-
too.
exactly.
So you guys carried Big Miz around a lot, huh?
We did. Yeah, and so with all the runs, I was the king of the goon squad. So the goon squad is I'm not a great runner. By that time you're probably, compared to your average person, a really good runner. But when you show up at Buds with all these like people who have all these athletic backgrounds, some of these guys ran in college and things like that. I was the people who are kind of like in last place on the runs, they call that the goon squad, and they get extra punishment and stuff like that. Well, I was always in the goon squad. Always eating everybody's
Big Miz
stuff,
was
always having to hit the surf when everybody else gets rewarded and stuff like that.
Did they call you Big Miz?
No, they didn't. Yeah,
Where
but
did you-
but it
is
was
there
also kind of a source of pride to be in the goon squad because you had
It made it harder.
right.
I've worked
You
harder
had
than
the-
you people.
You had the full experience going
Yeah,
through Buds, just
I can
getting
see
beat
that.
all the time. And
Joe, I got a question for you though. I think that firearms was your strong suit. I'm guessing.
not really. I mean, I kind of was middle of the pack when it came to firearms, but towards the end,
What kind
I
of
started
qualification did you have to do before you go to any kind of qualification before
None.
Buds? They taught
None.
you that. They
You
just
don't
taught
really?
you.
listen. You don't.
I think they teach you how they want you to shoot. and how
They do, but what you got to understand about Buds is not really where you learn a whole lot of anything. Buds is just a 6-month beatdown. I'd say the only exception to that is the middle part where you're diving. You really do get some phenomenal instruction in diving, and you have to learn how to do all that. But you don't really start learning until after buds, and you go to some advanced training after buds.
How stressful is the shooting? Because I think
It stressed me out.
Okay, because
Yeah.
our SWAT team, that's the most stressful of people trying out for our
Yeah,
SWAT team.
I think it stressed me out
Okay.
because I shot a little bit here and there, but I'd never really shot pistols before I went to buds. Not at that level.
Did you have a minimum score you had to shoot in order to move on?
I remember, I don't remember what the scores were, but there was a standard that they were looking for that you had to meet. And some people had
When
a
you have to
tougher
shoot a
time.
number, that's when it gets stressful, and that's when we lost
Yeah.
a lot of
Right.
guys on the
Right.
SWAT team. Was
Right.
only to shoot at 285.
Yep. And I'd never shot any kind of rifle or anything like that, just hunting rifles and shotguns when I was a kid. So that stuff was all new to me.
Right.
So let's circle back to buds,
Mm-hmm.
and so at the end, how many weeks do you do in buds, and then Hell Week starts?
So when I was in, it was 3 weeks and Hell Week started. But it would kind of rotate back and forth between the 5th week and the 3rd week.
Okay.
But
then-
when I was going through it, I think it was the 3rd week.
So in total, it's 5 weeks.
No, Hell Week is 1 week. I'm just saying you start day 1 of buds,
Right.
and sometimes it was the 3rd week was Hell Week, which is like the hard week where you're up all week, you don't sleep or anything like that.
Okay.
And then sometimes it would be like the 5th week. But I think now it's pretty much it's the 3rd week.
How much are and does it after Hell Week? How long is it after that?
It's 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hell Week's pretty early.
Hell Week's pretty early, and that's when you weed most people out. Is during
Okay.
Hell Week.
I was just going to
Yeah.
ask that. So then, and after Hell Week, do you start getting specific training at that point?
Seemed to me like that. So there's 3 phases. First phase is I can't even remember. It was just like it's like training phase. You don't learn anything. You just get
Right.
just get your ass beat.
Right.
The
They're
whole
just
time.
testing.
PT.
They're weeding out the week.
Yep. Log PT. Paddle and boats, surf passage. I want to say that was maybe like 6 or 7 or 8 weeks after Hell Week. You had to do that, and then you started the 2nd phase, which is dive phase. And a lot of people don't realize, and this would kind of mentally screw a lot of people up. A lot of people think that if you make it through Hell Week, they kind of ease up on you, and you're kind of done. No, that's not the case at all.
Wow.
In fact, I think it gets harder after Hell
Wow,
Week.
that's cool to know.
Yeah.
Did you ever contemplate like this is not for me?
Oh yeah.
Really?
The joke was if they put a bell next to our bed, we'd all be quit. We'd all quit. That alarm goes off at like 3:50 in the morning. None of us would make it.
That's pretty funny.
No, I was going through Hell Week, and you kind of get friendly with a couple people in your class, right? Especially people that are in your boat crew. And there was a guy that I was friendly with. It's almost like you hear stories about people in Vietnam where you don't want to make too good of friends with somebody because
Right.
yeah,
Make it kill.
it's kind of like that your first couple weeks going through buds. A person, if you become really good friends with them and they quit, it's a blow, So I had a guy that I was pretty good friends with, and I think on Wednesday, we had done a 4-mile time run on the beach, and so Hell Week you don't sleep. You're up the whole
That's-
week, right?
sounds
So by the
miserable.
time you get to Tuesday or Wednesday, you're a zombie. But I think it was Tuesday night. We had just done a 4-mile time run on the beach, and we got back, and everything is mental games, right? Can we say curse words?
Sure. and
So
fuck, yeah.
fuck games, right?
That makes a lot more sense anyway.
So we had just got done with a 4-mile time run, and when we got back, the instructors put a big show on about how disappointed they were in us, and they said, "You guys, unsatisfactory. You guys got to go do that 4-mile time run again." And it just kind of took the wind out of a lot of people's sails. Right? So my buddy looked at me and he's like, "I'm done. I can't. I can't do this. I can't go on this run." And
Nothing against your buddy there.
We kind of hoping you were calling their bluff, like they really didn't mean it, and they're just trying
Right.
to see you quit.
You know what would be the worst
No,
part?
they did.
No,
We
they-
had to go do it again.
Oh, they did?
So, sure, of course we did.
That's awesome.
That was Hell Week.
The worst part, I hate cold water, dude.
So
that
do
would
I.
be my struggle, man.
Yeah.
I would have struggled with that.
Well,
I hate
ask
cold.
my wife, who's the first person to put a jacket on or a fleece on?
When
It's
you're
me.
when
I
you're
hate
18,
being
it's a
cold.
lot. It's a lot better than when you're 25, though.
Right,
for
that's
sure.
true. Yeah, but no, he quit. That was kind of when he quit. I started going like, damn, it would be really, because when you quit, you're immediately taken away. All you got to say is I quit or I DOR, and they immediately take you away. You get to go take a hot shower. You go put some warm clothes on. You can go back to your room and get some sleep. And all you got to do is say, I want to do it right now. And they no
treat
question.
you like a king.
Yep.
Sawyer would have quit after week 2.
Yeah.
And then it's back. Hey, and then it's back to the ship.
Week 2,
Right.
How about hour 2?
Sure.
It's back to wherever you're going to be.
Yep.
Back to wherever you're assigned to.
Yep.
That's where they
You're
take
going to
you
go
right
where the
back.
Navy needs you.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
So Joe, and you eventually you leave the Navy and you come and decide to be a police officer. And I'm jumping ahead of Tommy,
Sure.
probably, but then you came and
Way
you got yeah, I know.
Well, you can edit this
We're
and maybe like put
But no,
this
no,
all chronological order.
but I just
We're
want to say,
skipping a whole section.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
well,
Yeah.
Tommy, you can take over. But when you tried out for the SWAT team, how stressful was that?
Way harder.
How'd you-
Had to be way harder.
How'd
right?
you-
I wasn't stressed out because I think one thing I did learn is if I wanted to do something, I kind of figure out, okay, what do I need to be able to do this? And I go prepare for it and I over prepare, right? And then once I get to a certain point where I know that, okay, I can do everything they're going to ask me to do
Dude,
without even having to worry about it. So I go in knowing I got this. I can do this. I know I've been doing this run.
I was
for
being
a couple months
facetious a
now.
little bit, but
I get you.
Hey, Tommy.
okay,
Right.
Tommy can go back to
Right, we'll go
be
back
back
to
on
left
schedule,
off in the
Tommy.
story.
Here's JJ. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. What'd you have for lunch today?
Let's see. What did I have for lunch today? I think Chick-fil-A.
No, but
Yeah.
you get done with, but you make it through. And then, like you said, you got injured the first time, but
Right.
you make it through. The second time, you make it through. Take us now. What's your life become as a Navy SEAL at that point?
Sometimes you wish you were still in Buds.
Really?
Yeah, it's a hard life, and whereas in Buds, all you had to do is not quit, and they tell you to do everything, right? Go do push-ups, go hit the surf, go do this run, and all you got to do is do it. When you get to a SEAL platoon, now all of a sudden you're a grown-up, and you got to perform, and nobody's holding your hand, and you're I was 19 years old and I was a part of an elite like special operations unit with some pretty impressive people, and I felt a lot of pressure because I just kind of felt like I never really did anything that crazy before I joined the military, and here I am around all these like super high performing people, and I felt like there was a lot of pressure just to not screw things up and be a part of this team.
At 19.
Yeah.
What were the
Yeah.
other ages? Were you the youngest or about
Oh.
the same?
Yeah, my first platoon, me and one other guy were the only people who were still under 21. Everybody else was mid 20s to 30s.
Really?
Yeah.
Surprising.
Yep.
I need to point something out here real quick, and that is, he talks about other high-performing people. Joe Busso is one of the most high-performing people I know. So he's very humble, but
Yep.
very high-performing
But
himself. So
I can understand the stress he was going through.
I
As
had
a
some good
19-year-old,
teachers.
that's unreal.
Yeah.
How do the older guys treat you, Joe?
Your first platoon is always kind of a rite of passage in the SEAL teams. You're a new guy, and when I was in, there was still some hazing. Your first couple of months, the older guys maybe weren't that kind to you.
They also test you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially my first platoon was a very old school platoon.
Right. And they had it done to them, and
Yeah.
they weren't stopping.
Well, and it's funny because I haven't thought about this for a long time, but I remember one of the scariest experiences of my whole life was not walking into the door for Buds. It was walking into the door for SEAL Team 4, which is a very historic team, one of the most historic teams. And it was like, kind of like if you were a baseball player and you were walking in, your first day to be a St. Louis Cardinal, you're walking in and here are all these great people that you idolized as a kid. So I walked into the door, and they kind of show you, hey, yep, you're in this platoon. You have to walk down this hall, make a right, and that's your platoon hut. And the platoon hut was our office for our platoon. Well, me and one other new guy walked in there, and nobody was in there. And I just saw I want to say that, was it Shrek? I think the movie Shrek had already come out. So this
Okay.
is around 2000. Wasn't that a relatively new movie at the time? So somebody had printed out a picture of Shrek, like punching the donkey or something like that, or hitting the donkey on the head. But it was a picture of Shrek, and it said the word, and I don't want to say his last name, but it was a last name that begins with a W, and then it said like new guy, and it was like Shrek punching the donkey who was the new guy. And I thought, like, we're all the new guys. What's going to happen here when these older guys are here?
Get punched.
And it was just kind of letting us know, hey, I don't care. You know, you've got to really perform to be in one of these platoons. And
How long did it take
expected
where
out
you
of it.
thought, I'm in it now, I'm respected, and they know I can do the job?
I didn't feel like that until maybe like right before I did my first deployment,
Really?
and they kind of really lightened up a little
Good.
bit. And but that first
How
training-
long was that?
training? About a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I also, when I came in, you didn't get your SEAL Trident when you graduated BUDS at the time. And now I think what's happening is, so you go through BUDS, which BUDS is, it's not a training program. BUDS is a selection process. So it's where they select you
It's an elimination
go
process.
to further training after
Right.
BUDS, right?
A really
That's all it is.
long test.
A really long test. So
It should be.
It is, yeah. So now they have I think it's 3 months after BUDS. It's called SQT, SEAL Qualification Training. I think it's named something different now, but it's kind of like if you were ever talk to a Marine, they talk about Advanced Infantry School after boot camp. It was our equivalent of AIT, Advanced Infantry School. It's where you actually really start to learn shooting,
Right.
tactics, how to use all the weapons that they have. But now you get your Trident after you graduate from SQT. But when I was one of the last groups of people to where you had to go through BUDS and then SQT, and then you had to go to your SEAL team and you were on probation for a year, and you had to be there for a year before you got your Trident. So I was one of the last kind of groups of people that I had to be at my team for a year before I finally got my Trident.
So you meet up with SEAL Team 4. You go to SEAL Team
Yep.
4
On the East Coast,
on the East Coast.
Little Creek, Virginia, which is kind of like by Norfolk. It's like the Virginia Beach area.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, how many do they call them squads,
They're called platoons.
platoons?
And then I think 2 platoons are a task unit.
And they're all there.
They've changed this now, by the way.
Is that where they're all at?
Yeah, for Team 4, it
Okay.
was, kind of just an office building. And each platoon had its own little platoon office called the platoon hut. I want to say that there were 8 platoons.
And then how many people per platoon?
15 about. 14
15?
or 15. Yeah.
And then when you would get deployed, you would get deployed with your 15.
Yes.
But you could get deployed with other ones.
You could do like a deployment with what you call your sister platoon.
Okay.
Sometimes people did that.
And then when you get to what state are you in right now? Where are we at?
Virginia.
Okay.
Like the Virginia Beach area.
How long are you there before you get your first deployment?
It all just depends because
You personal.
me, I think I was about a year and a half.
You were there for a year and a half, and then
Yeah.
you go on deployment. So
Yep.
for that year and a half,
Yep.
what kind of training are you going through?
Every SEAL platoon before you go out the door has to do a certain amount of training before you can even go out the door. And it starts with, just an example, like you might start with land warfare, which is kind of like open, almost like traditional infantry tactics, like outdoor infantry, platoon-sized infantry tactics. And that's usually like your building block before you do some of the more complicated stuff, like the CQB stuff, which is the inside the house room clearing stuff. So usually we would do like land warfare for a month, get a couple of days off, and then we'd go do we did our CQB training in
What's CQB stand for?
close quarters combat.
Okay.
Our battle. I think we called it CQC, close quarters combat. The Army calls it like CQB, close quarters battle. It's the same thing.
Now, Joe,
Inside the house, it's like SWAT stuff.
right?
Yep.
But
Yeah.
Joe, but
Room entries.
when you're
Right.
when you're doing this training before you get deployed, do you know where you're going to be deployed, or is that a secret?
You kind of find out maybe a few months before you finally.
Few months.
You might find out a little bit sooner.
But do you think they're training you for that specific? They already know where
Yes.
you're going. They're
Yeah.
training you for that specific
Generally,
operation?
yeah,
'Cause
yeah. A lot of times that's the case.
Right.
Sometimes not though.
Because aren't you assigned a certain part of the world?
It
kinda
used to be
thing?
when I first came in, because you got to remember that I came in pre 9/11. So I came in 99. And when I first came in, each SEAL team did have a geographic responsibility. And Team 4 was always the South America team.
Right.
So now, when the War on Terror really kicked off, they made it so that it didn't matter what team you were on, you can end up the Middle East or anywhere.
That leads me to a question.
Yeah.
So you're on the team, and after 9/11 hit, how much did things just ramp up for you
did.
guys? And how?
I'll
that
never-
must have been.
I'll
where,
never-
Where were you when that happened?
I was in Nyland, California, doing desert warfare training, and that CQ or the SEAL qualification training after BUDS. I was in Nyland, California, doing desert warfare training.
Really?
When
I want to interrupt
and
real quick and say that just led to a lot of conspiracy theorists going, they knew it.
Oh,
They
yeah.
knew it. They knew
Nope.
they were going to get attacked, and they had somebody from South America in the desert training.
No, but
I'm just saying.
every SEAL platoon has. They try
Bin
to
Laden
give
was
you.
a force. They knew he was the bad guy at the time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They try to give you every SEAL platoon training in all kinds of different geographic areas. So even if you are the South America team, it is a part of our pre-deployment training regimen to do like mountain and cold
Yeah.
weather training
Yeah.
and things like that. So they do try to get you training in different.
I like my
geographic
conspiracy theory better.
areas. That's good.
Okay.
Joe, would you rather do hot training or cold training? Oh, and I think you answered that earlier. Hot training.
I guess. Yeah, I liked it both. I liked the mountain
Did
cold
you?
weather training was pretty fun.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, do you
Yeah.
guys go through a lot of survival skills and
yeah.
stuff
So
like that and building your own?
Everybody eventually has to get put through what they call SERE school at the time. So survival, escape, resistance, evasion training. So that was that was probably the first special school that I went to, and they try to get all the new guys through SERE. SERE it's a training in the military to kind of prepare you if you're ever captured as a prisoner of war. And there's a Navy Marine Corps SERE school, and I think there's an Army one, and I think the Air Force might have their own too. But long story short, it's 2 weeks, and they teach you survival stuff and things like that, but also kind of how to survive being a prisoner of war. So
Is that pretty intense?
Well, I'd just gone through BUDS at the time, so for me it wasn't. Yeah, it was. In fact, it
It's kinda
was
like
a-
going
it was
through
almost
BUD/S.
like a it was
Perfect
almost-
timing. This is nothing compared.
It was
to
like a
that.
vacation. In fact, I loved it. It was one of the funnest 2 weeks I've ever had in my entire life.
Torture me
So,
more, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
What training of all that did you enjoy the most?
Sniper training for me by
Was
far.
it? Is that
Yeah.
and then
That's what I always wanted to be. I always thought sniper was cool. When I was in high school, I was the kid that you saw sitting in class. I was supposed to be doing math homework, but I was reading a military history book or something like that. So I read Carlos Hathcock's Marine Sniper book probably
Legend.
10 times when I was in high school. And so he was one of my heroes.
And
And
where'd you get that from?
I don't know.
Really? Your dad didn't encourage?
No, my dad's
Bookstore.
he loves history and
Bookstore.
I don't know. I don't know where that came from. I just gravitated towards it.
That's interesting.
I loved it.
Do you have a specialty on the team?
So after my first deployment, I came back, and that's kind of when I wasn't a new guy anymore, right? When you get back from your first deployment, you're not a new guy.
Right.
And that's when you kind of get your first chance at going to some special schools, like some harder, bigger, more advanced schools and advanced training. And a lot of guys from my platoon, they were either trying to send people to sniper school or what they call breacher school. And when I was in breacher school, was a really intense school, about 2 or 3 months. And I don't think I really had a choice. They just said, "Hey, you're going to sniper school," but it just so happens that that's what I wanted to do.
So you were a sniper on the
Yeah,
team?
I did. It's naval special
And,
warfare.
and we smartly made you a
Scout
sniper
sniper.
on our city SWAT
exactly
team.
right.
We told him whatever.
You guys
We
is-
told him whatever. Hey, you're a Navy SEAL. What do you want to do?
Yeah,
we
no
told
kidding.
them.
And to be honest
But
with you, as
I like that.
a supervisor, I was a sergeant. Steve was his lieutenant,
Yeah.
and have a Navy SEAL, and he's such a humble guy. I mean,
Right.
he's a salt of the earth kind of guy, and he was never showed that he was a Navy SEAL.
Nope.
And I always joked around and said, if you went out drinking with all of us, and a stranger came in and hung out with us and said, which one after you leave, which one was the Navy SEAL? They would not have picked him. He's just
Good.
a humble guy,
Right.
And
You can tell that.
And for us to supervise him, and I'm an idiot, so I mean, for me to be his boss was like,
I'm not as big an idiot, but
Oh yeah. But anyway.
Well, when you hear
it was
the
kinda
training he's
cool.
gone through, it
Right.
kind of.
I'm glad I didn't hear all
Yeah,
this
no, I
before.
mean,
I was.
right.
I just knew he was Navy SEAL. And he was a humble guy, and he was one of the easiest guys
Yes.
to supervise.
Yes.
And I just to have him as working for me. He was just a weird sound pleasure to supervise because I knew he was tucked away. He knew what he was doing. He was a great street policeman. So I mean, for me, I always used to joke around with people and say, "Yeah, I supervised a Navy SEAL," you know, and I also supervised a sergeant major in the military, Paul Drago. I mean,
That's
that-
right.
Like, that's pretty impressive. I
Yeah.
got two guys that were
Oh, yeah.
pretty high up in the
Heck yeah.
military, and I can actually put it. I'm going to put it on my resume. I'm going to fill out my resume
Right.
when I get home.
That's how you roll.
And I supervised a Navy SEAL and a sergeant major.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Hey Joe, I've never ever in my entire career been told that I was a pleasure to supervise. So,
I supervised you, Tom. You were not a pleasure to supervise.
it was a pleasure at times.
Yeah, after work.
Right.
But Joe, let's go. Some of your deployments. Can you talk about those in general? I mean, you don't have to get into specifics and what the mission might have been.
Yeah. So my first deployment, 9/11 kind of happened a little bit into our first workup where it was decided where we were going to go. And at the time we were still the Southcom SEAL team. So we were slated to go to South America, and that's where I spent my first deployment. Was I deployed down to Colombia, Panama, Peru, doing counter narcotics missions and what they call foreign internal defense, which is kind of training, linking up with the military from the host nation,
Okay.
and working with them, kind of advising them, doing some training. And
Now, did you do any within that? Okay, you're working. Are there some of them that are working covert operations,
yes,
and then some of them are obviously
yeah,
SEALs?
half the mission was like, it was none of it was ever completely out in the open, but half the mission was a little bit more overt. Hey, we're here to just train the Colombian military, right? And then the other half was maybe a little bit more covert.
And then when you're doing that, you're also gaining throughout that whole thing.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're training the
Yeah.
military, you're gaining intelligence.
Yep.
And when your covert people are out there, they're gaining intelligence, correct?
Yep.
And then you're filtering that back, obviously.
Mhm.
And then, do you guys all stay? How do you house there when you all go?
You know, it's weird is that sometimes when we were down there, we would be on a military base, like a host nation. You'd stay on their base, but sometimes we were in hotels.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard them being in
Yeah.
houses too. You know,
We
where
had
they
houses.
have
Yeah.
like
We
an
had safe-
Airbnb. You know, with
We had
filled with
safe
SEALs.
houses and stuff like that. Yeah.
And is that where the covert people would probably
I think it
operate?
just depends on what you were doing at the time.
Joe, what was your mission in Colombia though? What was the reason to be in Colombia?
I mean, it was counter narcotics missions.
so it was
and-
Pablo Escobar. Was he? What?
No, he was
He was gone
He
by
was
a
gone
long
by
time.
then.
I think it was President Uribe was the president of Colombia
Okay.
at the time. He might still be, but we were helping out the Colombian military in their fight against, the FARC was the big enemy rebel group down there, the Fuerzas Armadas Revolutionarias de Colombia. So they were kind of in conflict with the actual Colombian military.
Now, were the Colombian military on
Yes.
the U.S. side? So they would work with you and identify the FARCs and
Yep.
Do you still have
tell
any?
them to FARC off?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have any? Became friends with
That was
any
an
of
easy
them, or did you
Oh, yeah.
and still?
Yeah, they're
did it-
incredible people.
really
Yep.
interesting.
And you really felt sorry for them
Right.
because, a lot of those guys were in the military and kind of fighting against, basically narco terrorist groups.
Right.
And they had families in some small town somewhere. And it was a very real danger for them if somebody from their town found out that their loved one was in the military, that the family could be killed or threatened.
Wow.
So they had to really keep it.
They always had their face covered, didn't they? Pretty much most of the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, Colombia's kind of come around now. It
has.
tourists. It's like my daughter just went there not long
That's
ago.
what I hear.
But she did. Her whole crew came out with E. coli.
Right.
Came home with E. coli.
Really?
But yeah,
It's doing
Yeah.
great then.
she'll
huh?
never go back.
Things are going great.
It's a beautiful country.
It is. My
And the
brother
people,
wants to go there in
when
the
I was
worst
there,
way,
the
and
people there were great.
It's a beautiful
What
country.
What
It's
city
beautiful.
did she go to?
Cartagena.
Oh yeah.
You just made that up, did you?
No, that's,
Yeah, I
that's
did. No, she
that's
did.
one of the
She
coastal
did.
cities.
And she went with people that had like
Yeah.
They
That's a nice
stayed in
town.
a very very nice nice place, and then on the flight home, a bunch of them got sick. I mean, they very sick.
Yeah.
And so she's said she'll never go back. But my brother's he wants to go in the worst way. He loves all that stuff.
How long was your first deployment?
The Navy, we always do 6-month deployments.
6 months. And are they pretty stringent about that? And then somebody
Yeah.
comes in and fills your spot. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, you rotate.
The mission continues.
The mission continues, and the platoons will rotate in and out for one mission.
And then you'll share
the.
obviously, this is what we got from the
Yep.
information we got.
Yeah, there's
They're
usually
always
like
sharing those.
I think there's a week overlap where it's a turnover, and you kind of turn
Big
over
old
to the other
debriefing
team,
session.
debriefing, and just kind of an intro to country. And
Okay, and then
Yeah.
so when you come back, you're there for 6 months. You come back, and then what do they do with you?
then you start that year and a half workup cycle again, that training cycle. You get a new platoon. You get a new platoon, and then you start up like that year and a half training cycle. But a couple of months of that is you get a little time to take leave and take some time off when you get back. But when you get back, that's kind of when you get the chance to go to some special schools and things like that, like free fall school. That's a school that everybody would try to get. When I was in, free fall parachute training wasn't a part of so when I was in for parachute training, we had to go to Army Airborne School in Fort Benning, Georgia, and do that traditional like static line parachute training. Now, from what I understand, the Navy has always wanted to have its own parachute school for NSW, for Naval Special Warfare. And for some reason, the Army would never let go of that.
We'll hold that.
Yeah,
We'll train everybody.
Exactly. Well, it's like diving with the Navy. Like the Navy owns all diving training in the military. So if I'm an Army guy and I want to go to dive school, if the Army has a dive school, the Navy kind of like has to approve it and look at the curriculum and make sure it's just a weird thing about the military.
Everybody in
Trump will
the-
change all that.
Right. So the Army owns all parachute training, and we had wanted to get our own
You're not political.
parachute training for a long time. And so now when you graduate from BUDS and you go to that extra school, that SQT afterwards, I think that's when you go to, or it might be in between BUDS and SQT, but at some point before you go to your first platoon, you go through the Navy Special Warfare parachute training, which includes static line and free fall. So when I was in, you went to Army Airborne, which is only that, the old school static line where you jump out and there's a cord attached to your parachute, and as you jump out, it pulls it for you.
Pulls it.
Well, free fall is you jump out of the airplane and you pull your own cord. So now that's included in the extra training free fall school.
Sounds
But-
fun, but
Yeah.
all that Bud stuff didn't sound all that much fun though.
No.
To get to that.
Well,
But
I wasn't too crazy about jumping out of it.
one of the things that we talked about that day that I found interesting was the breachers, the guys that train for that, because
Yeah,
that is
breacher
high.
school.
That's got to be pretty highly stressful because if they screw up, people die.
Absolutely. And when I say breacher school, a big part of that is explosive breacher school. So using explosives to blow doors and, and the difference between a SWAT team and maybe a SEAL team or an Army Special Forces team is that, we couldn't carry a ram or like heavy, like breaching equipment.
Sledgehammer? Name is Sledgehammer?
Man, do you want to carry it? Do you want to hump 5 kilometers with a sledgehammer? So that's the thing is that's why explosive breaching was one of the tools that we wanted to have in our.
Joe, can I ask you a question? I'm going to go back
Sure.
a little bit. I got some inside information. That you did when you were jumping out of planes. You actually had you can take. You already know by your smile, and you know it. Can you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So here was my experience with parachuting, and no matter what you were doing, like I said, when you're doing these like workups and get ready to go on deployment, you have to do every kind of training. So it doesn't matter if you're going to go to the Middle East and be in the desert. You would have to do like dive training before you could go on deployment. Like
Keep you sharp.
as part of exactly. You had to get qualified. So you had to do like what they called air ops. So parachuting, fast roping, rappelling, all that stuff that was another block of training you did before you went overseas. So during I can't remember which one, but during one of my platoons, I had some pretty bad experiences doing some parachuting.
Elaborate.
Yeah, please tell.
So one of them was these these large military jump drop zones, right? Where you can go. The military kind of has it set up so you can go do parachute training. They're huge fields, and a lot of times they're like a kilometer long by a kilometer wide. They're huge. Big. And it's supposed to be just a big field, right?
Can't miss it. Can't miss it, right?
So during one of these jumps, I jumped out of the plane. Static line went up. I looked up. I could see my parachute. Everything was okay. And I'm looking down at a field, and it's like a kilometer by a kilometer. And it's just a big field. And then in the middle of it, there's a little road. And when you're done with your parachute, when you're done with your jump, there's usually like support people waiting with like a box truck. Mm-hmm. And you take your parachute and you kind of wrap it up, and all the parachutes go in the box truck, and the support people take it back to the team for you. Well, I'm up there and I'm looking, and I just see two tiny little dots, and those are the box trucks. And as I was going down, I was thinking, what's the luck that I'm going to land on these two box trucks? Of all the space in this
Now,
in
do
this
you didn't have
field.
control of the toggles where you can go left or right?
So one thing about static line parachute jumping,
don't
and
have
you've seen like Band of Brothers. They're just these round parachutes. You can kind of turn them around a little bit, and you can't really steer them like a modern free fall parachute rig, where it's almost like a wing where you can. These things you kind of can turn yourself around a little bit. For the most part, it's kind of where that thing's going to drop.
Is this your first jump ever? Or?
No,
Okay.
I had done a few jumps before.
Okay.
But like I said, it was just where I got put out, and you can like I said, you can kind of turn into the wind and fall a little faster, or you can turn it. Long story short is as I'm getting closer, I'm like, son of a bitch, I'm going right for that damn truck.
They're getting bigger.
As I getting closer,
They're no longer dots.
and now there's two box trucks, and they're parked so that there's like maybe 3 feet in between them. And I'm coming down, and I'm trying a couple of different things to control where I'm going, but I'm heading straight for those things. And sure enough, I came down right in between those box trucks, and I took the mirror off of one of those box trucks.
Were you dangling?
What's that?
Did you dangle?
I wasn't. I hit the ground, but I
I
took that rear view mirror off, and I scared the hell out of the support guys sitting in that truck.
They didn't know it was coming?
No,
They might want to take a peek out every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I need to go buy a lottery ticket, man.
You can thank your wife for that story, but
Well, the other one is the last jump I ever did in the military it was a tree landing.
that's what she was saying.
Yeah. So we landed in the trees, and
How high up? How high up?
Gilligan's Island.
from what I remember, like I said, this is all stuff that's happened to me. It's been so long, but from what I remember, they had the jump master was a training jump master, and the whole idea is
What's his name? No, I'm just joking.
God,
I'm joking.
I didn't even know who it was.
Richard
Some
Simmons.
guy. But they put us out so that the wind was gonna take us into this forest.
On purpose.
Okay, instead of like the wind taking us into one of those big jump fields, drop fields.
He didn't want you
No,
to
he
hit
didn't
another
do it on
truck.
purpose. He read the wind.
how they handle the forest.
He must have read the wind wrong, because we were
no.
just my whole stick. We were going right into like a national forest outside of the Virginia Beach area, and the whole time I'm just looking at these trees, and you're going about 20 miles per hour when you're falling. So I'm like, which of these trees is about to go up my ass? Right?
It's a good learning experience for the jump
Exactly.
master, though.
Do they have a boom truck that comes and gets you? Or
No,
you know?
we all landed in the trees, and when you're like in the air,
So you weren't the only one. So that's good.
No, all of us.
30 Navy
The worst
Navy
is if you're
SEALs.
the only one. You're like,
My whole platoon. We had a guy one guy broke his leg.
There's got to be some injuries on this.
Yeah, one guy broke his leg.
geez.
I ended up landing in a tree, and I was still about maybe 50, 60 feet in the air. I was way up in a tree, stuck there.
Yeah,
but I could hear
5,
somebody
6 stories.
screaming through the woods, because he landed. He actually was able to punch through like a little spot in the woods, and he did hit the ground, but his parachute like snagged on branches and stuff. He hit the ground. He broke his leg. Yeah, there were a few pretty bad injuries from that. But I had to.
did you guys get to meet up with the guy that was telling you to go?
They purposely probably kept us away from that guy.
Go have a talk with that dude.
They probably changed his position. You're not going to be a jump master anymore.
Yeah, I had to shimmy down the trunk of a huge pine tree.
No
Whoa,
kidding.
Yeah. Yeah,
Didn't
from
do
about
that,
50
buds,
feet
did
up
you?
in the air.
Holy cow.
My parachute's probably still hanging in those trees.
Now, I heard that one of our other friends, Joe Cronin, told me to ask you about the burpees. You were doing burpees and something happened. What's that story about?
Yeah, I told Joe this story, and he just got a kick out of it. When I first got to Buds, like I told you, your first couple weeks is not. You haven't even started training yet. It's called pre-training or in-doc, And but it's kind of the same thing. You're just getting yelled at, made to do push-ups, hit the surf. There was a rule at the time in the barracks. You couldn't leave anything in the barracks, anything in the hallway. So I think I was like in a rush at one point in time, and I had to leave like my pants, my boots, my top, like a T-shirt, and a bunch of things in the hallway. And like I said, it's all covered. It's wet and covered in sand and things like that. So, and then I think we went to lunch, and when I came back, this guy had printed out this huge sign, and it said, "Busso, you owe me 100 8-count bodybuilders for every item that you left in the hall." And an 8-count bodybuilder, it's now they call them burpees. It's kind of like a burpee, except instead of doing a jumping jack, you have to do that thing where you jump and put your hands in the air, but kind of like a burpee.
Oh man!
So what he did was he took all of my stuff, and so my belt was in my pants. He took the belt out of my pants. The belts were like 2-piece, like where the buckle comes off the belt. So that was 3 things. He took the shoelaces out of my boots.
Oh, no.
My hat there's a string that you tie from your hat to the lapel of your top. That came off. Turns out there were 12 things. So I had to do 1,200 8-count bodybuilders. But I had to start it after dinner that night. And I couldn't. I had to stay there the whole time until I did them.
Did you have thrown up?
I probably did at some point in time, but anyway.
That's what I
then
might have said. DOR, baby.
After every,
I'm guessing there's a lot of throwing up in buds.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Passing out.
After every 100, I had to go run and hit the surf. So that the training compound's kind of right on the beach, but it's a long beach, and there's about a 20-foot berm, so you had to do 100 of them, then run out, climb over the berm, run out, get in the water, get completely wet. And when they say you get wet and sandy, if you come back and there is one little spot on you that isn't covered in sand, you got to go back and do it again until you're completely head to toe covered in sand. So yeah, I had to come back. So you're wet, completely wet, wearing BDUs and boots, doing these 8-count bodybuilders. And the instructor was just I had to do it outside of the instructor's office. So he was in there watching TV and just hearing me, do these 8-count bodybuilders.
And you didn't dare cheat either.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to try, go ahead. But if you get caught, it would be a punishment.
Right.
You wouldn't even want to chance that punishment if they caught you cheating.
So
So
I'm
you
guessing
did
they had
1,200 of them.
Yeah, I had to do it. It was probably like 2:30 in the morning, almost 3 o'clock in the morning by the time I was done. And then I had PT. I had to be up at 4:30 in the morning for PT and do the whole thing all over again.
I'm guessing the instructor said this kid he's
I
tough.
think somebody
He's
told
not
me
going to
that-
quit.
I saw an instructor after that, and they thought that we were kind of impressed that you.
Yeah, we hope so.
That's awesome.
And if you wouldn't have done that, would that have been a disqualification?
You had no choice. You were either doing it or you were gone. You couldn't say no
wild.
to these guys.
That is wild. So
terrifying.
what about your second deployment?
So my second deployment, I won't say the country, but it was a country that's kind of like maybe the gateway to Europe for the Middle East. And we did, after I went to sniper school, after my first deployment, and I came back, they were starting a program, and I think the Army was doing it with the Special Forces, and we were doing it in the Navy Special Warfare. They called it Special Activities, but they were kind of taking kind of special operations people and teaching them a lot of surveillance and reconnaissance, like almost like CIA kind of surveillance training. And they picked my platoon for that. And so we ended up doing missions there looking for people that were wanted by the U.S. government, like
Terrorist threats.
That, and yeah, there was just like high value target type people.
Now, in that, would you work with CIA people and
Yes.
stuff like that?
Yeah, it was kind of like
Who comes up with the plan? The CIA?
I guess, like I said, but
You're
you
not in that meeting.
also got to figure I'm like 22 years old.
They didn't
You know what I mean?
really tell you a whole lot of
they're just
those.
like, this is what we're doing.
Right. This
So
is what
I'm
we
doing
need
it.
you to do.
So I ended up, and they kind of split my platoon up into kind of like the team that would actually be the takedown team, like kind of like the SWAT team, right? And then half of us were on like the recce team. And if you had gone to cyber school, chances are you were probably going to go to the recce team. And that's so I was on the recce team, and basically they give a place to go, and they'd give us a target, a complete workup on a target, and we'd have to go deploy into this area. And I was with it was me and 3 other guys, hundreds of miles away from any other American, in a place where I didn't speak the language. And
Wow.
We had an interpreter with us, so if we needed somebody to talk, that would be the person to talk. But we're in there and it was kind of up to us to go check out some of these locations and addresses where these people. It was police work. It was literally doing police
surveillance
work overseas, looking for, almost like we're U.S. Marshals overseas, looking for these guys. And
were you looking at them to capture them?
yeah, if we identified them, if we found them, and a big part of it was taking. We had to take pictures and set up like satellite satcom. So we had to. We all were trained in. We would take pictures on like a Sony digital camera with a telephoto lens, and then I'm talking like 2003 technology. Download that onto like a Panasonic Toughbook, and compress the photo into like a smaller file, and then set up a SATCOM radio with a SATCOM antenna and send that back to like a tactical operations center. And they would look at it and say, yeah, confirm this is the person, or no, we don't think this is the person. They would actually do that. And
then you would have instructions what to do if it was that
so
person.
the recce team, we were dedicated as being just the recce guys. We were doing surveillance and reconnaissance. All we had to do is kind of keep tabs on them until I don't even remember what they called them, but the takedown team or something, whatever, the strike team, they would come in and we would kind of hand them off, and they would come in and we would disappear.
Okay.
Right. So hopefully the idea is that they didn't even know we were there. So we could, you don't want to get compromised.
Right.
You're kind of.
Now, did you have to dress like
Yes.
the locals and all that? You know?
Right. Yeah. Rose has a picture. I dyed my hair black, and.
Did you cover your face and everything?
No, I didn't do that. But
You need to get that.
I'll tell you, it was one of the coolest things in the world. Is before we did that deployment, they put us through this like surveillance and reconnaissance training, and they had guys these guys were all retired like British SAS and SBS guys that worked in Northern Ireland in the 80s. These guys were in like 2003. They were kind of getting up there in years, and they were guys that worked in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, and they were kind of doing stuff like that over there, just covert surveillance and reconnaissance and picking out targets so that the special forces guys could come there and grab people. So those guys, we did I think we did like 3 or 4 weeks in Virginia, and then we deployed the Navy. We have a kind of what they call a unit, a Naval Special Warfare unit in Stuttgart, Germany. So when we got to Germany, we did another, I can't remember, 3 or 4 weeks of, it was like vehicle and foot surveillance training with these guys, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. And
Pretty bad people.
yeah, I mean, we
Badass
had
people,
rental
I
cars. We had like Volkswagen Golfs and BMW sedans and Volvos, and we were doing like we would get assigned a target, and they'd say you'd have to this guy. This is where he's at right now, and you guys have to have eyes on first thing in the morning, and it was like up to us to plan how we were going to do that. And so we'd go and set up surveillance in that area, and you'd be looking for him. You'd know about what hotel or place he was staying at, and then be sitting there in the morning.
So you go from all that fun. That's a good transition. So you go from all that fun, get out, you contemplate other jobs, and then you end up in the city of St. Louis as a police officer.
I did, yeah.
Working for these two idiots.
So
Hey, I'd like to apologize if I ever gave you an order to do anything at this point.
Well,
just because
I also think that don't ever put those guys on so much of a pedestal. Those guys in that world are just people just like us. And, the people that I work with in teams were just like you guys. They just, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
and,
you're
they're
right.
just human beings.
No, but
Except I can't swim. I'm afraid of heights. But other than that, yeah, we were a lot
you're right.
of
Well, you learn.
life.
You can learn how to do all that stuff. I never did anything that special.
You know,
If I could do all that, all I'm saying, and this is not just me being humble, but let me tell you something. If I could do all that stuff, you guys could definitely do that stuff too. If you just wanted to do it, you could do it. You just do it.
Well, I don't know about that.
Put yourself out there to do it.
Well, you definitely had the mindset.
I might not
just
have
wanted
quit,
to
but I
do
might have got tossed out anyway. But.
I just put it in my head that this is what I'm going to do, and they're going to have to kill me.
Wow.
You know,
So did
it's
you?
kind of the attitude you have to have.
When you came out, and then we talked about your father. Your father was on the police department for 30. How many?
Almost 30 years. I don't think he retired just shy of his 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something that you wanted to do, or is it something that you're just like, it kind of fits?
Growing up, so I grew up in the police world. You know, my dad was a city policeman, and I mean, a lot of these names that you guys talk about on the show are these guys you bring on. I remember being 10 years old, hearing these names, my dad telling stories and stuff like that. So I grew up in this world, and for me, the St. Louis Police Department's very nostalgic because it reminds me of growing up. And when I didn't necessarily want to do law enforcement, like when I was younger and when I was in the military, I kind of thought about it actually. I thought I might want to try law enforcement when I got out, but I had no idea what I wanted to do or which agency, federal, state, local. But when I got out, I was a little bit lost, and I went to SEMO, which is an awesome school. And I started taking classes, and I just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of reinvent myself a little bit, find out who I was again. And actually, I was thinking about like something medical. I thought there was a lot of guys that I was in the teams with that, especially like the medics and corpsmen, they had a pipeline program where if you were a corpsman, you could, while you're in, get your nursing degree. And a lot of those guys were getting out and becoming like nurses, which is a good job, right? Mm-hmm. And then a lot of those guys would go and become like either PAs or nurse practitioners, and that's a great career. So I thought maybe I'll try something like that. So I went to SEMO. I started taking biology and chemistry classes and things like that, almost like pre-med classes. But I don't know. About 2 years into it, I wasn't so sure that that's what I really wanted to do, and I just had no idea. So one time I came home and my dad said, well, why don't you join the police department? And when he said that, it just clicked. I thought, you know what? Why don't I would love to do that. That would be really cool. But I told my dad, I said, but you always told me never join the police department.
That's something
we all have to
we'll
say
take
it.
it back every once in a
My
while.
whole life, he's like, don't ever become a cop. Don't ever join the police department. And one day he's just, why don't you join the police department? He probably knew that I was kind of lost
Looking for
a little
something.
bit, looking for
Looking for
something to
something.
do. And I
Knew
thought,
you'd be good at it.
I'll
Knew you'd
do
be-
that.
Joe, I got to ask you a question.
Once I got into this line of work, I loved it. I fell in love with this
First, I
job.
want to say that we had the foresight. I think it was my idea, but I'm not sure. Steve would disagree. But we had
We
you.
can cut this part.
We had you teach us first aid and tourniquets.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
gave
okay.
that class. It was a great
yeah.
class, and you
Yeah.
were so good on it, and you knew your subject matter so
Yeah.
well. So that was actually very important. We probably need you to do that again for the SWAT team.
Sure.
It'd be great. But secondly, I was your immediate supervisor. Steve was the lieutenant, so it was a chain of command thing. But be honest with us. Who was your favorite supervisor
God.
out of the two of us?
I liked you both equally.
No, you can't get away with that.
No, Joe ain't gonna answer that.
Well, I had more
Joe,
face-to-face time with you.
Joe,
but-
did you just winked at me like you knew? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Walked in. That's they call that an L-shaped ambush. Right there.
And lastly, so how much when you met Rose, did you being a Navy SEAL help you grab her?
That's
Because
a question for Rose.
She's a catch.
She is a catch. Yeah. Yeah.
Rose, his wife, was in the crowd.
But she just ran upstairs.
She did.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
The
can't
funny thing
see,
about
so-
Rose
We can
is
ask her when
Rose
she
is
gets
very.
I don't think she knew right off the bat. That's what I did.
Oh, good.
She knew I was a city policeman. I think that was more.
That was probably enough.
yeah.
And her
it
dad,
wasn't
her
enough.
dad was a U City cop.
Her dad was So our kids, both grandpas, are retired police officers. So my dad was a police officer, and then Rose's dad was Tim
So
Heffler. He was a
You were doomed when she met you. Then.
detective sergeant, retired from U City PD.
Yeah, I'm glad that she's not here right now.
Yeah.
So since she's not here, she just walked off. You couldn't be any more opposite than her. She is she has a good time. She's funny. She's got a lot of big.
Are you saying he's not funny?
Well, Joe's laid back and he's easygoing. She is not. She's not easygoing, but she is actually. She coming back.
Here she
She's
comes.
got a lot of
You better hurry up.
personality.
Better hurry up.
She's. And can we say she can be the life of the party? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good time, Charlie.
Good
Yeah.
time, Charlie. There you go. All right. Sorry, we're just talking about you. But anyway, that's it. That's all I got, Joe. But appreciate you liking me better than Steve. I
Okay.
like that.
Right.
Yeah, so I will ask her that question later on, and maybe the next time I come up here,
You let
I'll
me
give
know.
I'll
Joe,
let you
I'm
know.
not so insecure to where it really, matters to me one way or the other. So you can give it to JJ if you
No,
want, because
you-
it means a lot more to him than
And I think we mentioned it earlier,
Appreciate
but Joe did end up working for both Stephen as the sniper on the SWAT team.
Those
Yes.
were great.
So,
Those
Yes.
were great years.
and I think you guys all went through Ferguson together.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Ferguson, all the riots.
Joe spent 2 weeks on top of the bear. At
Oh, yeah.
Ferguson.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I
and
lived
one of
on
the more
top of the bear.
dangerous spots, honestly,
Yeah.
because he was on top of the bear, and
Yep.
you felt some rounds going over your head.
Yeah, well, we
quite a
didn't.
bit.
That one time we had no idea, but there was, the glass of the front windshield of the bear. It took a round.
Yes, that was on South Grant. That was during
Was
the,
that on South
That
Grant?
was the night of the
Yeah.
grand jury
About what?
decision.
Right.
Like 20 inches just south of where our heads were.
Yes.
Poking out of that.
Yes.
thing? Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was-
we didn't. I don't think we realized it right away. And then I remember we get in the bear, and I'm like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And there was
Well-
a big star in the windshield.
Right. From like our first couple of days of deploying out there, they told us that somebody somewhere had gotten some intel, and I don't know where it came from, but I remember getting an intel brief that, hey, somebody's saying that there are people they want to get on a roof and shoot at the police, like the front line of the police officers.
I believe
Was
we
that-
took. I believe that.
Was
Well,
that,
no,
am
yeah,
I
I mean,
imagining
there's-
that, or did that really happen?
There was just. I mean, it was gunfire just about every night down there.
Right.
I
Yeah,
remember.
you heard
and that,
gunshots
and that was
everywhere.
that was a big reason having. It was very controversial having the snipers on top of there because
Right.
it was like, why we have snipers pointing guns at peaceful protesters, but.
I believe the
It's,
bear
at
took-
nighttime especially, it got really dangerous just because that's when the gunfire started,
right.
and we needed the guys up there to spot and see what was going on.
Well, I would always say if you had to take a shot in that kind of an environment, and there's a lot of people around, wouldn't you want the most precision shot that you could get?
yes,
Right. That'd have been you.
They didn't want snipers.
Well,
they didn't want anybody
but
up
you've
top.
got the- you've
much
got the
less-
tool-
I,
you got the
believe
right-
the bear. We closed it up once and
Yeah.
a few times and went through after it was the end of the night, and I believe we caught some rounds in the back of the doors.
Yeah.
yes,
Oh yeah.
we were getting shot at all the time.
Sure.
And then the crazy thing about it is we knew, one thing I talked about is that if we have to take a shot, we got to be 100% right,
Right.
because it's going to make things 1,000 times worse than it already is. And I can tell you, these guys took in a lot of fire, the snipers on top included, and then wouldn't fired a single shot. I mean, it was very disciplined.
Well, I mean, if you look back at that, and I think we said it on the show that we did about that, is that if you look at the injuries that didn't happen,
Absolutely.
compare. I mean, that was
Yes.
every night, all night long, and not that many. Again, people say, "Oh, this person got hurt, that person," but for the most part,
Right.
that thing was unbelievable. The way you guys did that, and
I agree.
And that was one of the first ones around. The last one that was like that was the Rodney King incident. None of us were around for that, and by that time, all
But
the
there's
training had
people
gone.
that died during the Rodney King riots.
Exactly.
Nobody died.
50 people
during
died in
this.
Rodney King.
Yeah, nobody died in Ferguson.
And these three were the reason, right?
Yeah,
Part of the reason.
I'll just
I
say
mean, they were our eyes. I mean, they would let us know, and because like I said, at nighttime in the dark, that was always our concern. Somebody with an SKS we don't even see
That's
could
pretty
take
cool.
a shot at us, and that's why we had to have them up on as at least a deterrent. Say, hey, we got somebody up there.
One of the things I want to end with, Joe, is that we talked about when you were on before about if you name these cartels, if you designate these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And on the last Federal Friday, which was released last Friday, we talked about it a little bit more. And the buzz that's going around Washington, D.C., and the buzz that's going around these Tier 1 assets, which is the Delta Force and the Navy SEALs and the Rangers and everybody. Do you think, would you want to go back if that were the case and they did that in South America where you're familiar with? Do
Yes.
you think, can you understand that
Absolutely.
buzz?
Yes, I would.
Would that be fun?
Yes, it
Now,
would be
do
awesome.
you think? I
I'd
mean,
love it.
There's talk
Hey,
about
hey,
too, that-
Rose, do you want him to do that?
No.
would-
Yeah,
would-
well, she's going like this. That's true.
well, you
Yeah,
think-
I would love to do something like that, but I don't think it would happen. Yeah,
Do you think they're going to make them terrorist organization? I mean, that'd be huge. Do you think
I think there's a very
good
good
chance
chance
now?
that that's going to happen.
I think it
but
needs to be done. Yeah.
No, the
Yeah.
fentanyl crisis has
Right.
changed everything. I think in terms of that,
Absolutely.
just because the amount of death that's
Yeah.
causing.
And I think one of the things he talked about in the show, though, was how it was neat how they would do their operations, where they would use the actual public and get them on their sides and know who the bad guy was, because they don't want that shit either. You know,
Right.
yeah.
Is that kind of what you did though with the
So,
other narco?
One, like I said, like one of the missions of special operations is it's foreign and internal defense and unconventional warfare is deploying down and linking up with host nation, whatever kind of group down there could be allies with you, whether it's like the country's military or even like a rebel group. But you definitely would see special operations people linking up with the host nation, some group from the host nation, and winning hearts and minds and kind of assisting them in their fight against that enemy.
It'd be fun to watch.
It would.
It'll be
Yeah,
fun to watch.
yeah.
I think that, and then we talked about how it funnels down locally
Right.
to where you can name some of these local drug gangs as
Yeah, I'd like
Tied to
it would
those
be very
cartels.
interesting to see how that could filter back to helping U.S. law enforcement
absolutely
with their cases.
and prosecutions.
Yep. That'd be
Because
very
you know
interesting.
you can see these dope dealers
Yeah.
if they get in front of a federal judge and they're charged with some kind of terrorism. That
Right.
well,
Well, can you imagine you get clues on somebody that's south of the border?
We can ask him. We can talk.
You got a
Right.
phone number, you got some addresses, whereas now it's kind of you can't even mess with that because
Right.
you know that you can't go get that information down there. But having something down there to where hey, go to this address. This is a phone number of somebody down there, and this is a nickname, and you could have some of our guys go down there
that'd
and
be neat.
pull some people out and figure out who's who. And
Joe, I know we're running out of time.
Sure.
But I
got
gotta
all
ask
the time in the world.
Okay, I got one question for you. Can you tell us what you do now? We know what you do, but you don't want to say it. That's fine.
oh, it's fine. So I'm a task force officer with a federal agency.
And I know
I
you-
won't say the agency.
That's
if
fine. But I
okay.
know that you had a pretty good arrest,
We
especially
did.
for the Midwest.
Yeah.
Can you say anything about that, or would you rather leave that alone?
We'll leave it alone.
It was just
Yeah.
really big.
It was just a really big arrest.
Yeah,
It
we
was
had
cool.
a pretty good seizure.
Yes.
One of the more
Hey,
impressive
you know what?
ones we've seen in the
Right.
area
Yeah,
in a long,
I
long
don't
time.
recall seeing a seizure like this
No.
in my
It,
time.
it was a result of a lot of work. You know,
Information.
a lot of just staying with it and not giving up on.
You know what? I remember
people.
when you left SWAT, and I was because you wanted out, you wanted to try something new. That's
I
your
did,
intent.
yeah.
And you jumped around. Then you're where you're at now and I think that's a good spot. I mean,
Perfect
that's a
spot.
perfect spot.
What I'm doing now is kind of this is what I've always wanted to do.
Good for you.
And it is kind of a blend. It's a little tactical, but it's also like investigative.
Right.
And,
Well,
I'm not
There's a-
getting any younger, so
Are you going to take a promotion test?
he should, but he probably won't. But I'll
No
say
way.
this.
well, it'd be really hard for me to leave where I'm at now because
that's-
over time,
If you love what you're doing,
I do
right?
like what I'm
you look
doing.
forward to
go.
going to work
But
every day.
at
and
the
work.
same time, all the time I think about like I would really love to. One thing good. Here's why I would want to get promoted. For the only reason is because it's a chance to like get with these new
Yes,
generation
yes,
of officers
yes.
and help them grow into their career and
Right.
teach them.
Yep.
And
You can do that.
That
what
would
you're
be
doing.
that would be the number one motivation.
It's
for
a hard
me.
thing to do. No, I mean, we
Right.
did it.
No.
We did it, but we didn't.
I mean, I
But-
worked in one of the positions that's similar to what Joe works in, and it's very hard to say, yeah, I think I want to
Yeah,
get
when
Because
when
it's
you
the best
love
job in the
when-
world.
right.
You know what,
you're
Joe?
really
CFO.
doing what you love.
You need to be
Yeah.
selfish sometimes, and
Right.
what you're doing now, you love it. And you're great at it. Ride it out, brother.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Find that
So
scam
far,
and
that's
hold
the
on,
plan.
baby.
Huh?
But I said,
I-
so
I
far
said
that's the plan.
my motto all through police department has been find a scam and hold on tight.
His is an actually a
And don't
scam.
write any reports.
Don't write a report and try not to write any reports.
Right.
I can say this.
And then
Joe-
when I say
Joe writes a
scam,
great
I mean
report,
those
too.
are the very, very, very best of the jobs. And if you're lucky enough to get one, just hold on tight.
Yeah.
And thing that. But Joe, thank you so much for coming on again.
Yep. This is
And,
great.
Yeah, tremendous.
We
I
that
love
was
it.
a tremendous interview.
Actually,
And,
it's one of my favorites. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I just love it's
we
what I
keep
like,
outdoing
too.
ourselves.
Yeah.
You're after
I keep saying
Moqua,
it,
then McClellan, and every time we go, we're like,
but
that
I'm
was
very
a really
interested
good
in the
one, man.
subject matter tonight.
Yeah.
Could I meet Bill McClellan at some point in time?
Can you?
Yeah.
Well, when he comes in, he's coming back.
Oh man,
He was
That-
awesome.
awesome one.
That was
Yeah, I
such
know.
that was such a fun interview
Yeah,
because he
it
just
was.
sat down and started ripping out
Right.
the stories.
Great
Yeah.
storyteller.
Talk-
What a great man.
Talk to Danny Howard. He can
Yeah.
set up a coffee with him.
I would
with
love
you.
that.
There you go.
Yeah, he did it for his
I grew-
sister.
I
Why
grew
can't
up-
he do it for
There you
Joe?
go.
I grew
Yeah.
up with Bill McClellan.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
we all did.
My
So-
dad.
Yeah, he's a legend. St. Louis
He's a
legend.
lifelong Donnybrook watcher.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was great. He was great.
All right, Joe. Thanks again.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joe.
Thank you, Joe.